Yes, recording. Thank you. Okay. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Sharper Mind series, Sharpen Your Mind. And tonight we're going to focus on 3 areas. It's a little bit of a continuation of what we started on the 15th last week, if you were with us then. Today we're going to focus on supplements, movement, and stress. And Lisa's going to cover some of it. I'm going to cover some of it for those of you who are kind of familiar with our format. So welcome. And somebody's going to share our slides.
Yes, I'm going to do that right now. All right, so I need you to open up the slide sharing, please. Thank you. Okay, here we go.
Okay, so that's what I just said. Welcome. Okay, so this is who we are. So this won't be new for those of you who were with us before, but for those of you who weren't there, welcome. We are nationally board certified health and wellness coaches, Lisa and I both, which means we took a big test to become nationally board certified. We are both members of the board of Sharp Again Naturally. Lisa is the co-founder and chair, and I'm a vice chair. And as far as I go myself, I'm a founder of Weiser Choices Health Coaching. I've been in practice here in I say here because everybody's home, right? Here in Mamaroneck, New York for 16 years. And I specialize in preventing and managing chronic disease and chronic symptoms. This could include anything from weight to your biometrics, the testing that you do with your doctor, if your doctor said they got a result that wasn't so desirable. And also, of course, cognitive health, which is what I also do in my volunteer work.
And I've also been a health coach for quite a while now, 19 years. And as well as being a health coach and working on Sharp Again Naturally, I've also worked with elders for a long time, over 25 years, as a volunteer and also on the board of a nursing and rehabilitation facility. So it's really where the worlds have kind of come together. When we first heard that there were causes of memory loss and there was something you could do about it, it just naturally made sense that we would want to get this information out. And here we are.
Just a reminder, we are health coaches and we do not give medical advice. So what are we looking for you to go home with tonight? What are you looking to take away? First of all, causes of dementia, memory loss, Alzheimer's are often lifestyle and environmentally driven. So we talked about toxins last time. That was a little bit more about environment. This time we're going to stick to things that we consider to be more lifestyle, things that are really of your choosing. We're going to talk about nutrition. I'll talk about that. Lisa will talk about exercise, and then we'll come back to me to talk about stress. And those 3 are 3 key drivers that you'll see Lisa talk about, mention when she talks about the 10 causes of dementia that we have identified with our medical and dental advisory board. So just so you know, dementia can usually start decades before symptoms appear. It is possible that they show up quickly if you've had some kind of an immediate toxic exposure, but they often usually start many decades before you even have symptoms. And early intervention provides you with the best possible ability to overcome this. Who are we? We are a unique 501c3 nonprofit. Our mission includes that we educate the public and the medical community about preventing dementia and also improving brain health. We empower everyone to take charge of their cognitive health as well as their general well-being. So everything that we say about your brain tonight will help you in every other way around your health. We support lifestyle changes that can improve cognition and may slow and possibly even reverse memory loss using what we call a scientifically based multi-therapeutic approach. We partner with like-minded professionals and organizations, and that is to broaden our reach and deepen our own understanding of memory loss and its causes. And to that end, we have our regular board, and we also have what we call our MDAB, our Medical and Dental Advisory Board that we work with ongoingly. So this is a growing concern for everybody. I'm sure everybody knows somebody who's affected by Alzheimer's or dementia or some kind of dementia, and you may even be worried about this happening to you, or you may have even sensed already that something might be happening to you. So we've all seen a lot of statistics, but there are two that I think are really, really blow me away, shocking here. The number of Americans that is affected and living right now with Alzheimer's is about 5.8 million. But what's even more alarming, as terrible as that is that in the next 30 years, by 2050, we're going to see nearly 14 million cases of this diagnosed. So that is really over doubling where we are now. And think of it this way, every 65 seconds, someone develops the disease. So the impact on family members, the employers of those family members, and family financial well-being is exponential. I'm going to give it back to Lisa now.
So we covered this last time. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it's really important to understand the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's disease. And so just to state that dementia is the umbrella term, and it's a progressive decline of cognition with many different causes and symptoms, which might include issues with problem solving, long and short-term memory, executive functioning or planning skills, disorientation, and even behavioral issues like irritability, restlessness, and getting lost. Now, there are different types of dementia, and Alzheimer's is one of those. You may have also heard of vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, and something called frontotemporal dementia. There's also a Parkinson's type of dementia. There are several different ones, but these are the most common. And of all of these, Alzheimer's is really about 65 to 70% of all dementias. Now, again, we looked at this last time, and I'll go through it very quickly, but there's a continuum of dementia where you may not even be diagnosed if you've got subjective cognitive impairment, but you know in your own mind and in your own being that something's not right. As symptoms progress, if this is not treated, and we would really encourage you to have it treated at that point, it will progress to mild cognitive impairment, where there will be symptoms and other people may notice, but the person is still very functional, still very integrated into their lives, can still interact with loved ones, and still do many of their regular activities. But as that progresses to moderate cognitive impairment, people have difficulty with activities of daily living. This could be taking a shower or getting dressed, or you probably are not driving anymore at this point. And as it progresses to severe cognitive impairment, you need care 24/7. Definitely need to be living with someone or often in a facility at that point. So the good news is in that mild to moderate cognitive impairment, the research shows that dementia can be successfully treated. And the research that we've seen really in the last 5 or 6 years has seen good rates of turning things around in the early stages. As people get further down the line, it definitely becomes much more difficult. So there have been several different research studies. Dr. Dale Bredesen is a medical researcher. He's done some of the research. There's the Finnish geriatric study, which is called FINGER, and it's actually being expanded throughout the world in at least 10 different countries. So it's very exciting to see that the approach is being researched and we're seeing success. Now, we've talked about genetics. The ApoE4 gene is said to be the Alzheimer's gene. You get one from your mother, one from your father, and there's a very high correlation. It does increase your risk, but it doesn't cause dementia. So this is where what we're talking about tonight, taking action, hearing the information and then taking action to reduce your risk. This is the kind of thing we're talking about, and we call it epigenetics. So you have your genetics, but it's also how that relates to your environment and your lifestyle and the things that you do. And then finally, start now. You may have no symptoms. You may feel perfectly well. You may not even have dementia in your family. But with what we're seeing, as the cases Nancy showed us, the cases are growing pretty astronomically. Prevention's the best treatment, and you will arm yourself with the information to learn how to take care of your brain. So again, we'll quickly go through these causes. And I just want to say before I do this that we're always looking for other things that we know cause dementia. And there are correlations and then there are causes. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the correlations that may turn out to be causes at some point. So we talked about nutrition last time, and Nancy will focus again on supplements today. So we won't spend any time on that. We talked about toxins last week and how important it is to just become aware of what's in your food, the water you drink, the air around us, and what's in your internal environment at home or at work. Effects of prescription and other medications. This is also side effects, interactions, and those reading the small print about this can cause dizziness or disorientation, or you can't operate heavy machinery. So I think all of us have at least seen prescription medication that can cause some of these symptoms. Heavy metals, like I'm sure many of you have heard, and we do speak about this, mercury, aluminum, lead. These are all neurotoxins, meaning they affect the nervous system. And then there are other metals that can also impact the body. Hormonal imbalances. These are the gender hormones, estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and then other hormones like cortisol, which if it gets too high is a problem. Thyroid, if your thyroid's too low, that can be a problem. So these are imbalances. Infections, low-level infections causing inflammation in the body, either from oral infections in your mouth, could be Lyme's disease, mold, food sensitivities or food allergies, urinary tract infections. These all can cause systemic inflammation, and you may or may not ever feel them. You may be asymptomatic. We will talk about physical activity today, but also these are the lifestyle causes. Not enough mental stimulation, not enough socialization with other people, prolonged stress. So we're gonna spend some time on that tonight as well. Sleep and breathing problems, very important. There's something coming up on October 2nd called O2 Day, and it's all about sleep and breathing issues. And then physical and emotional trauma. These are things that may have happened in childhood or other times in your life, and if not treated, can cause memory issues and obviously dementia later on. And so these are the three that we're going to be focusing on today. And in green, right? And Nancy will start with nutritional imbalances and deficiencies.
So some of this is a little review, but for people who weren't here last time, I'm going to run through just a little bit of what we talked about. So how does nutrition affect the brain? And of course, I harken back to my favorite saying, which is you are what you eat. So you see in this person's brain, you see kiwis and eggs and all kinds of green things. Because good nutrition provides energy. It supplies critical nutrients. And what I mean by that are things like vitamins and minerals, which you've heard of. Things you may not have heard of, like phytochemicals, perhaps, and antioxidants, which are what protect us from cancer. Good nutrition hydrates and detoxifies us. And generally, a rule of thumb that I like to use is to try to go for half your weight in ounces of water per day, going a little bit at a time. So you're comfortable throughout the day. That's how good nutrition supports brain health. Poor nutrition destabilizes blood sugar. So this is an important concept because I'm going to refer to this several times as we're speaking. I'm going to talk a lot about insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity. And so what I mean by this is that insulin is like a train or a ferry boat that carries the glucose into our cells This is my cell wall, carries it in to be used over here, and my cell can then use it as energy. If this cell wall is blocked up by the wrong fats, or I have too much sugar in my blood, it can't make that switch over. It can't bring the blood glucose into my cell to be used as energy, because the wall is thick and mucky instead of being smooth and clear. And so what happens is then you get what's to be called insulin resistant. You see what I'm saying? You're resistant to the insulin entering your cell. Creates inflammation. Lisa mentioned that before. One thing you want to know is that inflammation, when it is systemic, means that it runs throughout your body. It's not just in one small place on your body, like a pimple or a cut or a mosquito bite. It's generally it's throughout your system, but you can't feel it. So it's long-term, it's chronic, and you can't feel it. Poor nutrition damages the microbiome. This is an important concept that some people are getting to know a little bit more about, but it's not as obvious. And the microbiome is a one-cell-thick mucosal wall that lines the entire intestine. And what it does is it protects the rest of our body from things that shouldn't be entering beyond the intestinal wall. And it can become compromised by poor nutrition, the kind you see in this person's brain. So here we have some chocolate and macaroni and a donut and a hot dog and a bun. So these are the things that both create inflammation and destabilize blood sugar. Causes fatigue, fogginess, and depression. If you don't have that energy sliding into the cell, well, you can use it over here. You're going to feel very depressed sometimes, and certainly foggy and fatigued. It also builds up what we call our toxic load or our body burden. Without the proper foods that will help detoxify us, you're going to build up this toxic load. If someone who's on the call taught me once and likes to say, it's as though you haven't changed the filter in your car, the oil filter, and the toxins just continue to build up. So brain boosting nutrition, a review. Next slide. Okay, so here are some ideas, and again, we talked about these last time. Limit consumption of simple carbohydrates. What do I mean by that? Anything that comes in a box or a bag, anything that's made out of something that's processed. Usually that means it will have flour or sugar. It will have a lot of ingredients you may not be able to pronounce. And again, they'll raise your blood sugar super fast. You'll have that birthday party syndrome. When you take your kids to a birthday party, you know what I'm talking about. Add healthy fats from high quality sources. So the brain is made from fat and cholesterol. We actually need those in order to be able to think clearly, and our brain is made from those things. You see some good sources on the bottom there. They are what they look like: olive oil, salmon, nuts, and avocados are some. So good nutrition or brain boosting nutrition improves vitamin, mineral, and nutrient uptake. How do you do it? Lots of fresh, seasonal, maybe organic, healthy fruits and vegetables, lots of those things. And again, the things that you see on the bottom that are replete with all of those micronutrients that you need. Eliminate artificial colors, sweeteners, and preservatives. Why do this? Because those things can signal hunger even if they're not giving you calories. So it's sort of like you're tricking your body. Your body thinks it's getting fed, but it's not really getting fed. So it may send a signal a little bit later on that you're still hungry, but you may have already eaten. So it's very confusing for the body. The body will not register the nutrients in there. Hydrate for cellular health. I talked about that just to re-review it. Half your weight in ounces, the rule of thumb, of water per day. And minimize pesticides and herbicides. So one place to look at, last time we had a whole slide on what's called the Environmental Working Group, the EWG. Their website is ewg.org, and they will give you what we call the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. And that will tell you which fruits and vegetables it really will make sense to kind of budget for and spend your money on organic, because they're the most contaminated with usually 2 or more pesticides or herbicides or fungicides, versus the ones where you can get away more with, not having to invest in organics. But that's a good source, ewg.org. So brain boosting nutrition, consider supplementation. This is a new slide for us. I like it because it looks like little pills, because we're talking about supplements that do come in the form of pills or capsules that you can buy at the store, order on Amazon. There's a number of ways to get them. So supplements can improve focus and also reduce anxiety and inflammation. So the goal is to improve the focus, and one of the ways we do that is by reducing anxiety and inflammation. So each one of these things helps with that. Magnesium helps to reduce anxiety. Some of these things like omega-3s and turmeric in particular, those will bring down inflammation. So this is a theme that comes up over and over again, inflammation. Probiotics, I like to think of this as Pac-Man. So some of you with me on the call were around in the 70s and 80s. Pac-Man is the good bacteria kind of eating the bad. So the probiotic helps to populate the intestine to support that microbiome, that one cell thick mucosal wall that I referenced earlier. So those, if you get them from, you can get them from the refrigerated section. If you're traveling, there are ones that you can get that are not in the refrigerated section. So D3 with K2, first of all, it's great to get as much of your D3 as you can from the sun, maybe spending 15 to 20 minutes in the, maybe the early afternoon hours outside without sunscreen before you put it off. And K2, K1 is easy to get from animals. K1 is easy to get from plants. Brussels sprouts and leafy greens, all of those things that you know are so good for you. And K2 can be a little harder to get because it's in things like foods like liver. And what it does is it mobilizes the calcium so it doesn't stick to your arterial wall and cause plaques. So calcium is good for us, but can also be not as good for us. Okay, B12. B12 is great for your brain. That's kind of all you need to know. Coconut oil and MCT oil are also things that support the brain, which really needs so much fat. Brain boosting nutrition. Get tested for. These are tests that your doctor can easily run. B12, D3, omega-3s. Omega-3s, you saw the bottle. That's for EPA and DHA. There's two kinds. Magnesium, all easy to get tested for. And also retinol and vitamin A would be another one. Additional minerals that you can be tested for. These are called trace minerals. Trace because you need not a lot of them, but they're also difficult to find in food. So zinc, selenium, copper, and iron. Even small deficiencies in iron can cause cognitive decline, especially in women. And for zinc and copper, you want to make sure you have those in the right ratio, which your doctor can test for. Selenium is a trace mineral that you can get in Brazil nuts. So I like to have 2 or 3 a day, not more, because too many Brazil nuts can give you a type of toxicity that actually that looks like radiation poisoning, believe it or not. So don't eat a whole bag of Brazil nuts. Brain boosting nutrition. Okay, these are things to be thinking about. These are the big ones. Inflammation, body's on fire, that kind of thing. Insulin, which I've just talked about, and blood of glucose. So inflammation in the body, what does that do? It causes inflammation in the brain. So some people think of this as a very separate thing from the rest of this, right? They think they're brain people, what they're called. I call them sort of like, this person is just a head. They're not like with the rest of their body. And some people are in their body and they're not really thinking about their head. So it's all one system. So you want to be thinking about, if my body has inflammation, again, the systemic kind you can't feel, my brain is likely inflamed as well. So here are some tests that you can either speak with your doctor about that indicate the presence of this systemic inflammation. And they're important tests because you can't feel systemic inflammation, right? So we just want to keep hammering that one home. Those are HSCRP, which is highly sensitive C-reactive protein, homocysteine, and fasting insulin. Remember, insulin is that train. It's actually a hormone that helps drive the insulin into the cell to be used as energy. That's a good marker for insulin resistance, showing you how insulin sensitive you are. And when you get on this diet, if you're going to call it a diet, this kind of way of eating, you're looking to make the cells more sensitive to the insulin. So you want to bring the sugar down is kind of the overall theme. Tests that indicate insulin resistance and elevated blood glucose are primarily fasting insulin, but fasting glucose and A1C also give you a look at what the sugar actually is. And A1C is my personal favorite test. I always want to know my A1C because A1C gives you a look at the last 3 months of blood sugar, as opposed to the fasting glucose, which is a snapshot of that day, that moment in time. So these are the kinds of things you want to speak with your doctor about if he or she is not already doing these with you. I should say he or they.
So thanks, Nancy. That was pretty enlightening about supplements. So I am next going to turn to physical activity. It's one of my favorite topics because exercise and the brain, the most important thing really to think about exercise and the brain is that exercise helps so many other things that cause memory loss, that if you can get into an exercise routine, you're going to really help your brain throughout the rest of your life. So this hopefully will be motivating for all of you. It was for me personally, because I'm not a big exerciser, but learning what we've learned, I've learned to be. So it enhances nutrient absorption. So when you exercise, the nutrients that Nancy's been talking about, these supplements, as well as the ones you get from your food, are being absorbed into your body better. It relieves stress. I think we all, look, we're all living with stress, and we're going to talk more about stress today. And some of us have more of it at certain times in our life than others, but exercise will help to relieve that. It will also help you sleep better, especially if you exercise earlier in the day. You don't want to be exercising within a few hours of going to sleep because it'll be too stimulating. But if you exercise early, it really just keeps your body functioning well all day. And then you have that nice release at night where you're just ready to go to sleep. It keeps your weight in check. So this is one of the things I was talking about earlier. You know, obesity is not a cause of dementia, but because of what Nancy said with insulin resistance and diabetes, if you keep your weight in check, you're less likely to have those issues. So again, it's a correlation, it's not causative. It elevates energy and mood. So when you exercise, you generally feel better. It releases all those endorphins that you hear about, especially with aerobic exercise. Now, again, depression is not a cause of dementia, but it's highly correlated. So we want to make sure that we stay in a generally positive frame of mind. And I know that's been kind of hard these past, months, but that's the goal, and exercise will help. It improves circulation and blood flow to the brain. So you want to make sure your brain is getting enough oxygen. So and the blood, obviously, oxygen-rich blood is going to flow through, and it's going to bathe your brain in oxygen, which it needs. The nice thing about exercise is that it helps all of your systems. So not just your circulatory system, it helps, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, with your digestion. It helps your lymph system. So you want to exercise to keep everything going well. Insulin sensitivity, we just spoke about that with Nancy. And digestion, you want things moving through your digestive tract, your microbiome, fairly quickly. You don't want to get stagnated, and exercise will, of course, help with that as well. So we call this the exercise trifecta: cardiovascular activity, strength, and flexibility training. And I also like to talk about balance with this as we get older. But we're talking about aerobic exercise, which means with oxygen. And the idea is to get your heart rate up for at least 20 minutes as you're exercising. So that would mean that if you have a warm-up period and a cool-down period, you're exercising probably 30 to 40 minutes a day, 5 times a week. And that could be any number of ways. It could be brisk walking, some of these things you see here, working out on an elliptical or the treadmill, a bicycle. A lot of people like to do bicycling, a rowing machine, or actually getting into a boat and rowing. Singles tennis, which will get your heart rate up. Doubles tends to be a little bit more anaerobic. Jumping rope, that also can get your heart rate up. That's the idea. When we're talking about strength and flexibility training, so strength training with weights, it's really good for your bones to do strength training. You want to work out your upper and lower body and all the major muscle groups. So if this concept is new to you, it's hard to get to gyms right now, but there are a lot of trainers that work over Zoom, and that could be a place to start. But as we get older, again, you don't want to get osteoporosis. You need that weight-bearing exercise. And then flexibility you can get with yoga or Pilates, stretching, Tai Chi, Qigong. I mean, there are lots of different ways. And also these same sorts of activities also help with balance. And so you sort of get it as a bonus. But that's something that we see as people get older, when they lose their balance and they fall, it has this downward cascading effect. So this is how you want to keep your body healthy throughout your entire life. And you can do all these things that we've talked about all through your life. I mean, I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg was, she was known to do strength training, well into her 80s. So how do you achieve this? You want to do exercise that you enjoy. You're not going to do exercise that you feel browbeaten into doing or that you think is good for you, but you hate. So the idea would be to try to find something you like, where you can commit to a certain time period. Some people love to exercise in the morning. Some people really prefer in the later afternoon, not too close to bedtime, but maybe before dinner it could be a good time to exercise. Finding the right kind of exercise for you. I'm not a high intensity person, and I don't love running or cycling really, other than like leisurely on my bike, but I love to play tennis. I like yoga. I love brisk walks. And so you can come up with a combination of things that you enjoy doing. And a lot of times when you do these things with a friend, you're apt to support each other and really motivate each other. So that is really a good way to go if that's something you enjoy. And some people like that and some people don't. But again, finding what works for you. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Nancy, who's going to talk about stress.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay. So there's two kinds of stress. When we hear stress, we think that it's something that we need to tamp down on, control, get rid of, but that's not exactly true, because there's two kinds. One is actually very positive stress. It's necessary, and it says here, it keeps you motivated and active. It has a beginning and an end. So what? So getting ready for this presentation tonight, that could cause good stress. And but it's fun, and of course I know the stress presentation is going to be over at some point, and I love doing it anyway. So good stress is something that just makes you productive. Negative stress has a physical, mental, and emotional consequences. Once you start down this path, and let's say you start to do maybe yoga, like Lisa mentioned, or Tai Chi, or some of the stress reduction techniques I'm about to talk about, you may become more aware of when you are physically experiencing stress in your body. So we feel like it's a mental, emotional thing, an anxiety thing, and it's all in my head, but it really has a very physical counterpart. So if you can start to, and that part actually usually reacts first. So you've all heard of a gut feeling. That's a very real thing. That microbiome is a real active thing that's happening. And there's more nerve endings in your gut than in your brain anyway. So pay attention, because you're usually being given a very clear signal from your body that you're under stress. So what happens? What is happening in my brain when I'm under stress? So there's something that we refer to that we call the fight or flight response. So if you can envision for me, I'm big with my hands and doing demonstrations like this, envision that behind the bridge of your nose, there's a little on and off switch, like an old-fashioned light switch, not some of the, no voice switch, like the one you had to go like this with when you were a kid. So what happens is when you are in what's called fight or flight, this cortisol button switches on, and your body knows now that you are literally, you better do one of two things. You better get ready to fight or run. And this emanates from our ancient brain or our limbic system. Our brains are very sophisticated and we've come a long way, but this ancient brain part of our brain really hasn't changed that much. So when your body gets this signal that it's under stress, it understands you to be running from the bear or the wolf or the lion or the tiger or the fox. And all it can do is turn on this one stress response. It's no different. It's a fight with the spouse or bear chasing me. It's no different to my body. And what the body does though, is it has all these mechanisms to protect you, which is number one, it shifts or shunts the blood from my stomach area where it should be digesting the food and absorbing all those nutrients like Lisa talked about. And it shunts it to my extremity, to my arms and legs. So I can do what? Run from the bear, right? So when it's doing that, I'm not able to properly absorb my nutrition. And I may be depriving my brain now of some of those things that I suggested that you test for or take as supplements. Things like B12 and vitamin D, all of those kinds of things that you have to be, your body has to work to pull out of the food. Digestion and nutrient absorption are affected. So when we are resting, we call it rest and digest. It's the opposite of this fight or flight. If you have, a really good night's sleep, your digestion the next day should benefit from that. So the opposite happens when you're under stress. And again, picture, wow, my body can't send the blood both to my stomach to digest the food and to my limbs. So it chooses the limbs when I'm under stress. Digestion suffers, nutrient absorption suffers. Chronically elevated cortisol level causes what? Inflammation. That's the body's natural response over a period of time. Negative, what we call self-talk, worrying, that also can lead to poorer brain function over time. So again, just think about this button like an on-off switch, and when you get the signal, say, am I actually being chased by a bear? Or can I, maybe just take one deep breath and get myself realigned and remind my body that it's really not so bad and I can relax a little bit. So we're going to talk about some stress reduction techniques. And you can either listen to me say this, or you can just look at that picture, because looking at that picture will reduce your stress, and I can be done. But I'll just talk about it anyway, because I like to talk, okay? So become aware of when you are experiencing stress. This is the number one thing, and that's what I sort of gave you a preview of that in the last slide. Go deep in and be in touch with your own body and say, when do I get that feeling? For me, it's sort of a tightness in the area you call your diaphragm, right in your chest. And you have to say, wait, something's going on. Something isn't right here. It's listening to your intuition. So identify if there are things that are regularly giving you that feeling, and maybe then take steps to mitigate those kinds of circumstances. Practice what we call mindfulness. So I'm joking, but not really. Looking at this picture can be a form of mindfulness. Just getting intentional. Am I just going to slurp down my water, or am I going to really experience this liquid in my mouth, doing all these things and the hydration going to my whole body? Be really present with what you're doing and be there, whether it's eating and chewing, sitting down when you're eating, taking a walk and noticing the birds, the street on the ground, wherever you are, just noticing things. That's really what it means to be mindful. Investigate and learn stress reduction techniques. So I'm trying to really simplify here and say that being mindful, I have one client likes to look at art in an art book. Things like that can be very de-stressifying for people. Certainly yoga and meditation. And now you'll notice that we're multitasking here, because Lisa talked about yoga and the exercise part of this, the physical activity. So yoga, I like to say, is a really lovely multitasker, because you get your exercise in there, and you can also reduce some stress, and you can get a little bit of a spiritual hit. Okay, and get more in touch. Deep breathing, lots of apps on the phone now for this. One that's called Calm, another one called Headspace. There are tons of them out there, really easy. Everyone has a phone, so you can do that. Take time out of each day to breathe and ground. So what do I mean by this? This is just what it sounds like. When we say grounded, I think of it more as being centered, like coming back to yourself, and maybe doing a round of 4 deep breaths. Takes less than a minute. And you know what, and then nobody's really in a meeting anymore, but if you're in a meeting even on Zoom, or you're in a meeting in a meeting room, whenever that should happen again, you can do this right when you're sitting there, and nobody needs to know that you're doing it. You can do it sitting at a red light. You can do it anytime that you're feeling overwhelmed. Just stop and take 4 breaths. Get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. One thing we haven't mentioned so far that Lisa and I do as health coaches is we work in a paradigm of what we call bio-individuality. And that means that we recognize that each person is completely different. And this goes for what foods work for you, and certainly how much sleep you get. So 7 to 8 hours is a good rule of thumb. Some people might need 9, and some really might do fine with a little bit less, but that's a very good rule of thumb for most people. Here's my favorite. Learn to say no. Seriously, this is my favorite, okay? We all want to be doing a lot. A lot of people have what I call the disease to please. You'll know right away if you're one of those people. What can you say no to? What can you delegate? If you have a job, can you delegate at work? If you have a family and you're a mom, there's lots of people around you can delegate to. So I like to say, because I know that cooking takes up a lot of time, and if you're going to listen to some of our suggestions, you may need to spend a little more time cooking. If you eat, you cook. So, if you have a 4-year-old, you can sponge the table. Everybody can help, and that will help you be able to balance your stress better. So consider multiple causes. As I said in the beginning, we use a scientifically based, multi-therapeutic approach to treating dementia and cognitive decline. We just talked a little bit in depth about 3 of them, right? So, but all causes must be addressed. And for every person, I say there is what I call a tipping point. So does this mean you have to do everything perfectly and address all 10 all the time? No, but you'll know right away when you make a few changes here and there, if you're suddenly feeling clearer and like you have more energy, that you're on the way back. If you're feeling completely better, you go, what? Okay, I'm good. I can just continue with the things that I'm doing. I up the sleep a little, I up the exercise a little bit, I cut back on processed foods, I added a few supplements, and I'm good now. Or I'm not quite there yet, and I need to still do some digging and investigating around these causes. One of my next favorite slides, health span versus lifespan. So here's the newsflash, okay? We are all going to live likely to 100. If you're on this call, you have a very high likelihood of living till you are over 100 years old. Why? Because Western medicine has made so many advances, and the pills and the surgeries are available. They can help treat almost every disease. I mean, the life expectancy now, even for people who have suffered from pretty serious diseases, it still can be very long. But you'll see there the difference. There's a red line, which is the years lived, which I just said out there around 100, and the green line, which right now gives you a health span of approximately till your late 70s or 80s. If I'm saying you're going to live to 104, 105, which is what I do tell all my clients because I believe it, what's going to happen from age 80 to 105? What is your physical, mental, spiritual health going to look like? What's your brain function going to look like? If you look now over to the left on the vertical axis there, how is your cognition? How is your physical capacity to live on your own and do things for yourself and maybe for other people? What is your stress tolerance like? And really, most importantly, do you have purpose and do you have support? Remember the saying no part, right? Do you have purpose in your life? Because that's going to be very motivating to do a lot of the things that we talked about.
Okay, so getting started. So just going to pause here for just a minute and say, we hope that you've learned some things, even in this short presentation, that you can do to keep your brain and your body healthy. So try to identify maybe one thing in your mind that you can do now to improve your brain health. And just think about that. And you may have something very specific in mind that you want to do. And the important thing now is to put that thought into action. And it's not always so easy to do. And it's why Sharp Again went from being a nonprofit that focused solely on education to one that wants to empower and help everyone take steps to improving their brain health. And education, we've learned, is not enough for the most part. So it's why we've created some programs. And They come under the banner of the Sharper Mind programs. One of them is webinars, which you're listening to tonight, and we'll continue to have these webinars. Another one is a small group education and coaching program, which will be 8 people for over 8 weeks, working with a health coach and hearing information like the information you've heard tonight, but even perhaps in greater detail, and being able to ask an expert, perhaps a doctor or another person who's, well-versed in whatever that particular week is. And then making, again, individual steps, goals that you can work toward. And maybe it's just one thing a week. But, if you do one thing a week after the course of a year, you've really accomplished quite a lot. So we encourage you to think about this. You can ask questions about programs at the end, at the Q&A. And if people still want to stay on, I think we have Myra online. She's head of this group, of this program. She can answer some questions. And then finally, one-on-one health coaching is really for people who probably know they have an issue. Either they have a family where there's been some dementia, or they've started to already notice changes in their own brain health, and they want to take action and work with a health coach. So we have these types of programs available. And as a next step, you might want to visit sharpagain.org. Check out our programs. There's more information online. And you can email if you have particular questions that aren't answered tonight at sharperminds@sharpagain.org. And then we also, if you've learned something tonight and you feel that programs like this are helpful, we ask that you support us so that we can continue bringing programs like these to others, and actually to communities that really don't have any other resources. We acknowledge that there are communities of color, disadvantaged communities, where there is more dementia. And we see it as our role at Sharp Again to be working with those groups as well. So I want to thank you, Nancy, and my email is there on the screen. And we're going to start our Q&A. We have about 10 minutes for Q&A. And I'm going to ask Sue if she can toss those up. I'll stop sharing and we can all come back together.
Sure. So there was a question about sugar. How careful do people need to be with sugar in general, or sugary things? So it's not just sweetened things, but also foods that have natural sugars.
Do you want to answer?
Do you want to take that?
Yeah. So again, think about the bio-individuality thing, and think about what I said about getting some of that testing done. So it's a little hard for me to speak to a whole group of people when I don't know the whole history of the person and what their levels are. So and also honestly, not just what the level is in isolation, but what does the whole of their lifestyle look like? So for somebody who is, a runner, they will burn through that glucose more so than, much more quickly than someone who is completely sedentary. And if you're in between, then your situation is kind of in between. So if you're a person who's getting your heart rate up in the way that Lisa talked about, 20, 30, 40 minutes, 5 days a week, you can get away with a whole lot more. If your sleep is appropriate and your insulin sensitivity is good and your insulin resistance is not, is not there, and you're not insulin resistant, then you can get away with more. So I can't just say, oh, sure, it's okay to indulge once a week, once a month. I can't give an answer like that, but I would say that, the more you can stay away from anything made from powdered, so any sugar, any processed food, anything made with flour at all, is not going to help your case. It's not easily, your body absorbs it too fast and spikes your blood sugar levels, and we get on what we call the sugar roller coaster. So other sugary foods, if you're talking about fruit, That also will depend on how active you are, how well you sleep, and what your individual, what we call biomarkers are. So it's important to get the testing work done that I talked about. The HbA1c, or the A1c, it's the same thing, the fasting glucose and the fasting insulin, and also the lipid profile as well, because sugar can turn into fat made by your, in your liver, and you can have your cholesterol spike too high. I don't worry about that so much, but other levels can get off kilter from having too much sugar.
The only other thing that I would add to that, Nancy, because that was a very complete answer, is that sugar is addictive. So,
sure is.
If you start eating sugar in the morning, if you have like sweet cereal, or you have a Danish or something that's made of, those ingredients that Nancy's talking about, and you have sugar in your coffee, and it's the kind of thing where the more sugar you have, the more you want, even if it's aspartame or, equal or
I talked about that before, the hunger stimulation
right
of that.
Right. So, the key is, and we talk about this as health coaches, that even, stevia, let's say people ask me about stevia all the time, maybe it's a better alternative, but it's still, it's still creating a sweet taste, and that sweet taste, your body still wants more sugar. And you have the same thing with alcohol too. People ask about alcohol, is one glass of wine okay? Maybe for you it is. But again, I find, I'll share this with you, if I have any more than one glass of like white wine, I want dessert. Because
that's how it works.
It's prompting me to want more sweet. So that's just kind of another aspect.
I say it's almost like you think of training a dog. I don't have a dog, but I know about training dogs. That you are retraining your palate and your taste buds. And once you do that, you're not going to have this, you're not going to even have this question anymore, to be perfectly honest, because you're going to be off it. I have an avocado with sea salt on it for breakfast, and then maybe some coconut yogurt. It's not dairy based, and some nuts. And, then I'm like, why do I feel so good tonight? And my vitamin B12 pill. And I'm like ready and raring to go, and I'm not thinking about what I'm not having.
Thank you. Is there any other way to get K2 besides supplements or animal foods? Are there any plant-based options?
Yes, there are. Yes. There is sauerkraut and kimchi and something called natto. Now, the problem with those foods is that the amounts of K2 are variable, and how they are absorbed is also variable. So that's why it's good to take that's why we have on the slide the D3 plus K2 supplement, so that you're getting enough.
No.
That's it. That's a good question. You can certainly eat those other things. Natto, by the way, probably many people here haven't had it. It's really difficult to eat.
Thank you. Can you say anything about the NADH supplement?
I can tell you that I've heard about it, and I've heard doctors speak on it, but I am not really equipped to speak on it too much myself.
Nor am I.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you both. I don't see that we have any other questions unless someone wants to type in anything else. We can talk a little bit about the small group program if people have any questions about that specifically. We have Myra on our webinar this evening, and she can answer any questions that you might have about the small group program.
I just wanted to say one thing. I'm Julia Warren, and I wrote about, I don't know if you saw, it's not really a question.
Yes.
I just wanted to introduce myself to all of you. I learned of you guys from Debbie Draley, who has been like a friend, almost a dear friend, really, and a mentor for years now. She said one of the hardest things has been for her to find someone who accepts Medicare in this field. So my views totally align with like the material that you guys presented. But if I can be of service to anyone here, please reach out, because I do home visits, telehealth. I'm in New York and New Jersey. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you. And just so everyone knows, Debbie's a board member of Sharpen and Naturally, and she's a elder care consultant.
And an
And we all work very closely in this field. So thanks so much for introducing yourself, and
Nice to meet you.
be a great resource.
You know what? I love to work in teams. It's like to collaborate with people. It makes me enjoy my job much more. And I think a lot of people probably feel that way.
Definitely.
Definitely agree.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions? If not, I'd love to just, we're coming on to the hour, but Myra, do you want to say a few words about the program and maybe starting to take those first steps?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Myra Oni, and I am a health coach. And I am going to be coaching in the small group program that begins on October 6th. The program will have a maximum of 8 people in it. And what really the focus of the program is coaching people to help them create goals for themselves in terms of their lifestyle, help them create goals that will improve their brain health, basically. So for instance, we will be doing some educational pieces, but we're also encouraging you to really start investigating your own needs, the things that you need to know yourself. And so in other words, well, let's say, I'm sorry, I was just going to answer questions. So let's say that you decide that you want to be in this program and you have a goal of reducing sugar in your diet. So what we would help to support you to do would be to make that a quantifiable and achievable goal. And we would support you throughout the course of the program in helping you to achieve that goal and tracking how much better you feel, how much better you're doing. And really that's it. It's coaching programs are very organic. So it's hard for me to pin down and say, oh yes, this is what we're going to do. This is what's going to happen, because the group becomes very supportive. Myself and Steve Ledvina, who is also coaching in the program, we're really here to help support the people who are there to change their lifestyle, because as Lisa said, it can be a very, very difficult thing to do on your own. And it's a lot easier if you have someone to support you. We'll be meeting for 8 weeks, and 3 of those weeks we'll have expert presenters in different fields. So it's sort of like a master class. And then the other weeks, we're really going to be encouraging you to be working on your goals in between times. And then you come to the program. When you come to the sessions, we'll talk about what worked for you, what didn't work for you, what changes you might want to make to help you reach your goal. We will be focusing mostly on goals around nutrition, sleep, stress, and exercise. So because
Right in this first 8 weeks.
Excuse, yeah, that's the first 8 weeks. Yep.
Right.
Yep. So that's pretty much it. It's the program includes 2 individual consultations with either myself or Steve. And the first one is prior to the program beginning, so that we get to know who you are and what your needs are, what your goals are, what it is you want for your life. And then at the end of the program, we'll do another consultation to help you move forward. Because one of the things we really want you to do is to develop your own processes, so that whatever benefit you get from the program, you can take it forward with you in your life. And you can say, you know what, I now know how to set this goal. I know how to reach it. And I'm going to go to the next one. And so that you can actually learn to support yourself in your own health.
Thank you so much, Myra.
Sure.
So we'll open it up if there are any more questions. I'm happy to have them now. And if you think of something later, you can always write to sharperminds@sharpagain.org. That's Sharper Minds, plural.
I want to thank you guys. I think this was excellent material. A lot of people need to learn this, and I'm 26 years old, and it's not too early to start, because this is really lifelong, all this stuff. It's, you know, mind and body, of course, are connected. So to protect your brain, you're doing yourself really good service when you can. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you guys.
I think Topany has a question around blood tests.
Yeah, I saw it.
Okay.
Yeah, so just, yes, I think, yeah, any doctor can do the blood test that I mentioned. Any like regular old doctor place.
Great. All right. We want to thank you all so much for being here tonight. We hope this has been helpful. And, you know, we're here as a resource. So please feel free to contact us.
And pay attention for when the next one is.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, good.
All right, all. Take
Thank you very
care.
much, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.